What's up, Buttercups? This is Randy Ritchie with Premier Pro Wrestling doing a episode of Women Wrestlers You Should Know because it is Women's History Month. And I'll tell you, two of the most talented, memorable wrestling characters in the United States were two beautiful Japanese girls who were called the Jumping Bomb Angels. Now, please don't let my mispronunciation of their names make you think that I don't respect them. I'm just an old guy, and this is how we function. Before I get started, though, please note this is being brought to you commercial-free, sponsored by Premier Pro Wrestling. So please like and subscribe here on YouTube and support Premier Pro Wrestling in the links in the description. The Jumping Bomb Angels were Norio Tateno and Itsuki Yamakasi. I didn't know this. They had a 10-year run as a tag team between the United States and Japan, where they were trained and where they're from. Now, I know, and we all know, hopefully you know, how hard and rigid the training is in Japan for all wrestlers, especially compared to the United States. Unbelievable. The thing that I've realized while doing these Women Wrestlers You Should Know episodes is that it was even harder on the Japanese women over there, which makes sense when you think about the cultural differences, you know. They were with the World Wrestling Federation at the time, and they were doing things that hadn't been done in an American ring before any of the men were doing them. Anybody that's a fan of high spots and what you guys consider work rate matches would love the Jumping Bomb Angels. Just search for them where you can. If it's on the network, if it's on Peacock, if it's on YouTube, and you will be impressed. The thing is, when these girls did it, they didn't do it like it's being done today. They weren't just crash test dummies. These girls knew how to tell a story in the ring as well as innovate. And if they were around today, I'm going to go ahead and say Asuka is great. Asuka is almost as good as both of them. But they were a little bit better, you know. So if you're a fan of Asuka and you get it watching Asuka, you'll love the shit out of the video footage available in the Jumping Bomb Angels, man. They were unbelievable. Now, they were really getting attention at the WWF house shows, especially the bigger venues that WWE would run. And, you know, WWE's greatest town in the history of WWE, WWF, has been Madison Square Garden. And they were gigantic draws in the Garden, probably as gigantic draw of the main events at the time. And I can't remember who was on top, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was Hogan. You know, and that's saying something at that time. People were there just as much to see the women's match as they were to see the top of the card, the main event. The main events, and that's how talented these girls were. You know, they had great matches there, and they were working with the Glamour girls at the time. And just to give you an example of just something disgusting, and this is the way the industry used to run, was the politics. The woman who was credited as, I guess, the godmother of professional wrestling for women was Fabulous Moolah. Everybody's heard that name, and everybody's familiar with her. And I'm sure most people are familiar with the way things were done as in regards to Moolah, where she almost served as a pimp to these women wrestlers. You couldn't wrestle in the United States in most cases without Fabulous Moolah being involved. Moolah was a huge star during her prime, and Moolah is a name that we still know today. The problem is that she was such an abusive, horrible woman that she would get this mind meld on women's wrestlers. You know, half the people that were wrestling, and when, she cornered the market on women wrestlers, even girls she hadn't trained, everybody thought she had so much juice she could get into their heads, and she would make it be like if a company wanted these wrestlers or female wrestler, had to have Moolah's thumbprint on them, And this is the way it goes. Just when they were starting to get over, Moolah got jealous. And Moolah was the go-to at the time, of course, after the time of Mildred Burke, for the wrestling companies in Japan to get female wrestlers over there. Moolah was still intimidated, even though she was how many years retired at the time for the most part, and certainly wasn't young enough to be on the road and work the schedule that the Jumping Bomb Angels were working, nor could she have that level of a match in the ring. Well, she was around and she was sneaking around, and she got jealous and intimidated by how over the Jumping Bomb Angels were. So she instructed the other tag team that was feuding with the Jumping Bomb Angels, the Glamour Girls, to drop the titles, and she had it booked in Japan, where they were beaten by the Jumping Bomb Angels in Japan. And Vince McMahon, the WWF, got pissed off about it. So what ends up happening then is, because the Glamour Girls were worried about Moolah's juice, they all of a sudden couldn't get a hold of Pat Patterson, who was basically booking the Sun Rosen set and his ass in regards to things like that, before that match had happened. Now, I know Pat, or knew Pat, and Pat played along with the politics because he was probably getting something out of it somehow, and he just wasn't available, so they went ahead and did the job and listened to Muda, and because of that, Vince McMahon said, to hell with women's wrestling. I don't have the time and energy to put into it, so as a result of those politics, who's at fault, Vince McMahon or Moolah and Pat Patterson? But anyway, the Jumping Bomb Angels were way, way ahead of any other female wrestlers or male wrestlers at the time when it came to what you guys like to call work rate. The difference between them doing it better than Kenny Omega today or the Super Kick Clowns at AEW is because they knew when to do it and how to do it in their matches. Those guys simply don't. Those guys could learn a thing or two watching and studying the Jumping Bomb Angels in their wrestling matches and the way that their style met the Glamour Girl style in the middle of a ring. That was compelling, and once again, ultimate innovation. They did things back then that these guys couldn't do today on their best day, regardless of their size and shape and athletic ability. The other thing is, I can imagine what a culture shock it was to come here. And, at the end of the day, they ended up back in Japan, and they also, kept their careers going, But again, two pioneers for today's wrestling style, and I would not be surprised if half of WWE's top female wrestlers today aren't inspired by, at the very least, the moveset of the Jumping Bomb Angels. Again, this is Premier Pro Wrestling's Women Wrestlers You Should Know. So be cool, like, subscribe, while you're here on YouTube, and at least go and check out Premier Pro Wrestling on Patreon, because we've got so much exclusive content over there. And I'm talking about almost 500 matches, so it's actually a real decent little streaming service. Thanks for giving a shit. We'll talk tomorrow.